The courthouse knew Isaiah Brown as just the janitor, the quiet black man who emptied trash bins and mopped floors for 15 years without complaint. What they didn't know was that behind his carefully cultivated invisibility lay the mind of a legal genius silenced by corruption. Judge Conrad Whitmore had made sure of that, having systematically destroyed Isaiah's promising Yale Law career decades earlier, when the young student dared expose discrimination within his prestigious firm. Now, as Whitmore presided over a case, forcing dozens of families from their homes, fate placed Isaiah in an unexpected position, witness to injustice he could no longer ignore. When the arrogant judge mocked him on the stand, expecting deference from just a janitor, Isaiah's response, a flawless recitation of constitutional law that left the courtroom stunned, wasn't just testimony. It was the first strike in a battle for justice 25 years in the making. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The courthouse came alive every morning like clockwork. Lawyers in pressed suits clutching leather briefcases rushed through security. Clerks hurried with stacks of files. Defendants and plaintiffs waited nervously on wooden benches. And through it all, Isaiah Brown moved quietly with his mop and bucket, almost invisible to the bustling crowd. At 53, Isaiah had perfected the art of blending into the background. His dark skin had weathered with age, crow's feet framing kind eyes that missed nothing. He nodded politely when someone bothered to make eye contact, which wasn't often. Most days he might as well have been part of the building's architecture. "Morning, Isaiah," called Rita, the security guard who'd been working the metal detector for 15 years. "Morning, Rita. They working you hard today?" Isaiah's voice carried a warmth that belied his unassuming presence. "Same as always," as Psych waved through another attorney without looking up. Isaiah pushed his cleaning cart toward courtroom 4, where Judge Conrad Whitmore held court. The room was already filling up for the morning session. As he emptied the small trash bins, he caught sight of Whitmore striding in through his private entrance, black robe billowing behind him like a cape. Judge Whitmore, with his silver hair and patrician features, commanded the room instantly. At 62, he wore his authority like an expensive cologne, overwhelming and impossible to ignore. His cold blue eyes surveyed the courtroom as if assessing property. "Mr. Davis," Whitmore barked at a young black public defender struggling with an overstuffed briefcase. "I trust you're actually prepared today, unlike yesterday's embarrassing display?" "Yes, Your Honor," Davis replied, his voice tight. "I have all the motions ready as requested. Speak up, counsel. This isn't a library." Whitmore's tone dripped with condescension as scattered chuckles rippled through the gallery. Isaiah kept his head down but watched everything. He recognized the familiar dynamic. Whitmore had a particular way of dressing down younger attorneys of color, a subtle edge in his voice reserved specially for them. "All rise." The bailiff's voice cut through the murmurs as court officially came into session. Isaiah slipped out quietly, moving down the marble hallway where courthouse staff gathered in small clusters, their voices lowered to conspiratorial whispers. "Did you hear about the West Side Heights case?" A clerk with a red ponytail leaned against the water cooler. "Judge Whitmore's presiding. Richardson Development is trying to bulldoze that whole neighborhood." "Those apartments have been there forever," replied another clerk. "My cousin's friend lives there. Says there's like 30 families getting evicted, including some veterans." "Richardson always wins," said a third voice. "They've got money to burn and judges in their pocket." Isaiah slowed his pace, the mop moving in smaller circles as he listened without appearing to. "The lawyer fighting it is that young woman, what's her name? Ruiz? Works pro bono mostly. Good luck to her. Going up against Richardson Development and Whitmore, she'll need a miracle." Isaiah moved on, pushing his cart toward the next corridor. As he turned the corner, he nearly collided with a woman rushing past, arms full of file folders and legal pads. "Sorry," she mumbled, barely looking up. Papers slipped from her grasp, scattering across the recently mopped floor. "Let me help you with that," Isaiah said, kneeling to gather the documents. Maya Ruiz looked up in surprise, as if she hadn't expected kindness in these halls. At 32, she had the weary determination of someone who'd been fighting uphill battles her entire career. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, her navy suit off the rack but carefully maintained. "Thanks," she said, genuinely grateful. "I'm already late for the West Side Heights hearing." Isaiah handed her the stack of papers. "You're the lawyer fighting Richardson Development?" "Trying to," Maya sighed. "Not that anyone around here thinks I'll succeed. Sometimes the most important fights are the ones nobody thinks you can win," Isaiah said quietly. Maya gave him a curious look, as if really seeing him for the first time. "You sound like my constitutional law professor." "Just something I heard." "Once," Isaiah replied with a small smile. "Good luck in there." Maya hurried away, and Isaiah returned to his work. As he cleaned the drinking fountain near courtroom 4, he overheard two paralegals discussing a prior ruling. "Whitmore completely misquoted Harrington versus California," one said. "He claimed it established that property rights supersede tenant protections when—" "Actually," Isaiah interrupted before he could stop himself, "Harrington versus California dealt with confrontation clause issues, not property law. You're probably thinking of Harrison versus California Housing Authority, where Justice Stevens wrote that property rights, while fundamental, cannot be weaponized to undermine the dignity and stability of vulnerable communities." The paralegals stared at him, mouths slightly open. "I read a lot," Isaiah muttered, quickly returning to his cleaning. As they walked away, he heard one whisper, "What's with the janitor who quotes Supreme Court cases?" By lunchtime, Isaiah had worked his way down to the basement where the maintenance staff took their breaks. The room was small but comfortable enough, with a microwave, mini fridge, and table that had seen better days. "There he is, the professor," called out Hank, a broad-shouldered maintenance worker with 20 years on the job. Isaiah shook his head with a smile. "Just doing my rounds, same as you." "Man, I heard what you did upstairs," said Darnell, the youngest of the maintenance crew. "Schooling those paralegals on case law. You're something else, Isaiah." "It was nothing." "Nothing, he says." Hank snorted. "Isaiah used to be somebody once, you know that." He looked at Darnell. "Before your time." "What do you mean, somebody?" Darnell asked. "Ancient history," Isaiah cut in firmly. "And not worth discussing." Hank raised his hands in surrender. "All I'm saying is, there's more to our man here than a mop and bucket." Isaiah ate his sandwich in thoughtful silence, while the others chatted about sports and weekend plans. When his shift ended at 5, he gathered his things and caught the bus to his modest apartment in the West Side Heights neighborhood, the very community at the center of the court battle. His one-bedroom apartment was small but meticulously organized. Bookshelves lined every available wall, filled with law books, case digests, and constitutional commentaries. Yellowing newspaper clippings were carefully preserved in plastic sleeves in a binder on his coffee table. On the wall hung a single, framed photograph, a much younger Isaiah standing between two distinguished-looking professors on the steps of Yale Law School, all three smiling broadly at the camera. Isaiah set down his keys and picked up the mail that had been slipped under his door. The logo on the top envelope made his stomach tighten. Richardson Development. He opened it slowly, already knowing what he would find. "Notice of intent to terminate tenancy," he read aloud, the words bitter on his tongue. The same developer. Trying to evict his neighbors was now coming for him too. He sank into his worn armchair, the letter dangling from his fingers. For a moment, he closed his eyes, memories washing over him like waves. A packed lecture hall, the weight of legal books in his arms, the pride in his father's voice when he'd called home to share his LSAT scores. Then other memories intruded. Cameras, flashing, headlines screaming, shame burning through him like acid. The ringing of his phone pulled him back to the present. "Mr. Brown? This is Maya Ruiz. We met today at the courthouse." Isaiah sat up straighter. "Yes, Miss Ruiz. How did you get my number?" "The maintenance supervisor. Look, something happened in courtroom 4 after you left. There was an altercation between a Richardson representative and one of the tenants. It got physical, and security had to step in. Was anyone hurt?" "Just bruised egos, but it's complicated things. Judge Whitmore is claiming he didn't see what happened, but I know you were cleaning in there when it started." Isaiah's mind flashed to what he'd witnessed. The Richardson lawyer deliberately shoving an elderly tenant while the bailiff was distracted, then playing victim when the man pushed back. I saw everything, Isaiah said quietly. That's what I thought. Maya's voice was urgent now. Mr. Brown, would you be willing to testify as a witness? Isaiah's grip tightened on the phone. Testify? In Judge Whitmore's courtroom? I know it's asking a lot. You could face workplace backlash. But without an impartial witness, that tenant could be held in contempt, maybe even charged with assault. Isaiah glanced at the eviction notice on his table, then at the old photograph on his wall. 25 years of silence, of hiding, of watching injustice from the shadows. When do you need me there? He asked. The next morning, courtroom 4 buzzed with tension. Word had spread that Maya Ruiz had called the courthouse janitor as a witness, and curious onlookers packed the gallery. Richardson Development's team of attorneys sat confidently at their table, led by senior partner Thomas Blackwell, a man whose tailored suit probably cost more than Isaiah earned in 3 months. Isaiah sat alone on a bench near the back, dressed in his only suit, a navy blue number slightly out of style but well-maintained. He'd ironed it carefully that morning, his hands remembering the ritual from another life. When Judge Whitmore swept in, his gaze immediately found Isaiah, narrowing, slightly before he took his seat. Court is now in session, the bailiff announced. We're here to address yesterday's unfortunate incident, Whitmore began, shuffling papers before him. Ms. Ruiz, I understand you've called a witness? Maya stood. Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Isaiah Brown. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Whitmore's eyebrows rose as he watched Isaiah make his way to the witness stand. A courthouse janitor, Whitmore remarked, not bothering to hide his skepticism. How unconventional. Isaiah was sworn in, his voice steady as he promised to tell the truth. He could feel the weight of every eye in the room, including those of several maintenance staff who had slipped in to watch. Mr. Brown, Maya began, can you please tell the court what you witnessed yesterday afternoon in this courtroom? Isaiah described the incident in clear, precise detail, how the Richardson attorney had deliberately provoked the elderly tenant, the exact sequence of movements, the words exchanged. And you're certain the Richardson representative initiated physical contact? Maya asked. Yes. He shoved Mr. Jenkins first, using his briefcase as cover to make it look accidental. Mr. Jenkins only pushed back after being struck in the chest. Blackwell shot to his feet. Objection. This witness is clearly biased. He's a resident of West Side Heights himself. Isaiah's heart skipped. How had they known that? Is this true, Mr. Brown? Whitmore asked, leaning forward. Yes, Your Honor. I've lived there for 15 years. Then your testimony is compromised by personal interest, Whitmore declared with a dismissive wave. The court will, with respect, Your Honor, Maya interrupted. Mr. Brown's residence doesn't invalidate what he saw, and there's legal precedent supporting the admissibility of his testimony despite potential bias. Whitmore's lips curved into a condescending smile. Is there now? Please educate us, Ms. Ruiz. In Thompson v. City of Louisville, the Supreme Court held that even witnesses with potential conflicts of interest must be heard when they provide unique factual testimony unavailable from other sources. Whitmore chuckled, the sound echoing in the quiet courtroom. An interesting attempt, but Thompson dealt with due process in criminal proceedings, not civil disputes over real estate. Isaiah felt something shift inside him, a door long closed creaking open. Actually, Your Honor, he said before he could reconsider, while Thompson indeed centered on criminal due process, Justice Stewart's concurring opinion explicitly extended its reasoning to civil proceedings where fundamental rights, such as housing, are at stake. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Whitmore stared at Isaiah, his smile frozen. Furthermore, Isaiah continued, his voice gaining strength, in Williams v. North Carolina Housing Board, the court held that witnesses to civil disputes involving basic human necessities carry a special credibility when they themselves understand the stakes personally. Whitmore's face reddened. Mr. Brown, do you understand what an affidavit is? Or are you just repeating things you've overheard in my courtroom? The condescension in Whitmore's tone triggered something deep in Isaiah's memory. Professors who doubted him, partners who dismissed him, a system that had crushed him. An affidavit is a written statement confirmed by oath or affirmation. For use as evidence, Isaiah replied calmly. And regarding evidence obtained during searches, I believe the Fourth Amendment is instructive here, particularly as it relates to the unlawful entry Richardson's agents made into several West Side Heights apartments without proper notice. Isaiah recited from memory. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Absolute silence engulfed the courtroom. Whitmore's mouth had fallen slightly open. Maya stood frozen, her pen suspended above her legal pad. Even Blackwell seemed unable to form words. I read a lot, Isaiah added quietly into the silence. Whitmore cleared his throat. Mr. Brown, where exactly did you receive your legal education? I didn't say I had one, Your Honor. Then how do you explain your apparent familiarity with constitutional law and legal precedent? The public library is free, Judge Whitmore, and I've worked in courthouses for many years. The judge's eyes narrowed. Mr. Blackwell, you may cross-examine the witness. Blackwell approached like a shark scenting blood. Mr. Brown, you're just a janitor, correct? I'm currently employed as a maintenance worker, yes. And you claim to have memorized constitutional amendments and obscure legal precedents? I have a good memory. Do you have any formal legal training whatsoever? Isaiah hesitated, feeling the weight of 25 years of silence. No. So you're just a janitor with opinions about the law? Blackwell pressed, his smile vicious. Have you ever even set foot in a law school? Before Isaiah could answer, Maya objected. Relevance, Your Honor. Mr. Brown's education has no bearing on what he witnessed. Sustained, Whitmore said reluctantly. Move on, Mr. Blackwell. Mr. Brown, isn't it true that you stand to benefit personally if Richardson's development plans are blocked? I'd keep my home, as would many others. So, you admit you have every reason to lie about what you saw? Isaiah leaned forward slightly. Mr. Blackwell, I swore an oath today. In my experience, oaths matter more to those who have little than to those who have much to gain. Murmurs of approval rippled through the gallery. Whitmore banged his gavel. That's enough, the judge snapped. Mr. Brown, you will restrict yourself to answering the questions asked. The cross-examination continued, but Isaiah remained unflappable, his responses measured and precise. When Blackwell tried to trap him in contradictions about the timing of events, Isaiah calmly cited his exact movements throughout the day, corroborated by the maintenance log he'd signed. By the time he stepped down from the witness stand, the atmosphere in the courtroom had shifted. People were whispering, phones were discreetly recording, and Judge Whitmore's face had settled into a mask of barely contained fury. In light of this testimony, Maya said, I move that all charges against Mr. Jenkins be dismissed, and that Richardson Development be sanctioned for their representative's behavior. Motion taken under advisement, Whitmore said tightly. Court is adjourned until tomorrow morning. As people filed out, Isaiah found himself surrounded by reporters and curious onlookers. Mr. Brown, where did you learn all that legal knowledge? Are you really just a janitor? How does it feel to stand up to Judge Whitmore? Maya appeared at his side, guiding him through the crowd. Don't answer anything, she whispered. We need to talk privately. They found an empty conference room, and Maya closed the door behind them. That was, she began, then shook her head in amazement. I've never seen anything like it. You quoted precedent I didn't even know existed. Williams v. North Carolina Housing Board isn't real, Isaiah admitted. I needed something Whitmore couldn't immediately disprove. The rest was accurate. Maya stared at him. You made up a fake precedent that sounded real enough to fool a federal judge. Who are you, Isaiah Brown? Before he could answer, Maya's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her eyes widening. You're trending on social media. Someone recorded your testimony. She turned the screen to show him a video already accumulating thousands of views, captioned, Courthouse Janitor School's Judge on the Constitution. Isaiah's blood ran cold. That can't be online. I can't be visible like that. Why not? You were brilliant in there. You don't understand. There are reasons I've stayed under the radar. Maya studied him intently, then pulled out her laptop. Let me show you something. She typed Isaiah Brown Yale Law into a search engine. The results made Isaiah wince. Old newspaper articles, academic journals, law review pieces. Rising star at Yale Law accuses prestigious firm of racial discrimination, Maya read from one headline. Promising black law student's career derailed by controversy. She looked up at him. That's you, isn't it? Class of '98, top of your class clerking position lined up with Justice Marshall. Then you just vanished. Isaiah sank into a chair, the weight of his past suddenly heavy on his shoulders. That was a lifetime ago. What happened? I made the mistake of thinking the law applied equally to everyone. His voice was bitter now. I was wrong. The firm you accused, it was Whitmore, Blackwell, and Turner, wasn't it? Judge Whitmore was a partner there before his appointment to the bench. Isaiah nodded slowly. Now, you understand the problem. He recognized you today, didn't he? Maybe not at first. It's been 25 years, and people see what they expect to see. A black janitor in his 50s is invisible, just part of the background. Maya paced the small room. This changes everything. Whitmore has a massive conflict of interest in this case. We can file for his recusal, cite judicial bias. And accomplish what? Isaiah interrupted. Get another judge who's just as deep in Richardson's pocket? The system doesn't work, Maya. I learned that the hard way. Then why did you speak up today? Why quote the Constitution? Why put yourself back on their radar after all this time? Isaiah was quiet for a long moment. Because some things are worth fighting for, even when you know you'll lose. As they left the conference room, a courthouse security guard approached them. Mr. Brown, Judge Whitmore wants to see you. Alone. Maya grabbed Isaiah's arm. You don't have to go. Yes, I do. Isaiah straightened his tie. I've been avoiding this confrontation for 25 years. The guard led him to Whitmore's chambers. Space Isaiah had cleaned hundreds of times but never entered as a guest. The judge sat behind his massive oak desk, jacket off, tumbler of amber liquid in hand. Isaiah Brown, Whitmore said, swirling his drink. I thought you looked familiar this morning. Had to make some calls to confirm it. Judge Whitmore. You know, I always wondered what happened to you after that unpleasantness. Never imagined I'd find you pushing a mop in my courthouse. Life takes unexpected turns, Whitmore chuckled darkly. Indeed it does. One day you're a hotshot law student making wild accusations. The next you're scrubbing toilets. Isaiah remained silent, refusing to take the bait. Here's some free legal advice, Whitmore continued, leaning forward. Stay in your place. Whatever game you're playing with Ms. Ruiz ends now. This is my courtroom, and I will not have some disgraced, almost lawyer undermining my authority. Is that all, Your Honor? Whitmore's eyes narrowed. For now. But remember, I made you disappear once before. Don't make me do it again. That night, Isaiah couldn't sleep. The video of his testimony had gone viral, with news outlets picking up the story. The janitor who schooled a judge. His phone kept buzzing with calls from unknown numbers, reporters probably trying to dig up the story. Around midnight, a knock at his door startled him. Through the peephole, he saw two men in dark suits, no one he recognized from the building. Mr. Brown, one called through the door. We represent some interested parties in your housing situation. We'd like to talk. Isaiah didn't answer, watching silently as they eventually left a business card and walked away. The card bore the Richardson Development logo. Finally, exhausted, he fell into a restless sleep, only to bolt awake from a nightmare he hadn't had in years. In the dream, he was back at Yale, surrounded by flashing cameras, being led away in handcuffs while classmates stared and professors turned their backs. The accusations that had destroyed his future echoed in his mind as he sat up. Sweating, plagiarism, falsified research, character unfitness. All lies, carefully constructed to discredit the student who had dared to expose systemic racism at one of the country's most powerful law firms, Whitmore, Blackwell, and Turner. Dawn found Isaiah sitting at his window, watching the neighborhood come alive. For 25 years he'd hidden in plain sight, burying his knowledge, his passion, his voice. Now, in the span of 24 hours, everything had changed. His phone buzzed again. Maya Ruiz. Isaiah, have you seen the news? They're calling. You the constitutional janitor. People want to know your story. That's the last thing I need. Maybe it's exactly what you need, Maya countered. And what we all need right now. Isaiah watched as an elderly couple emerged from the building across the street, the Jenkins, whose eviction notice had come the same day as his own. What do you have in mind? He finally asked. The truth, Maya replied. It's time to tell your story, Isaiah. All of it. Maya's apartment was a stark contrast to the polished courthouse, books stacked on every surface, case files spread across a coffee table, and a corkboard covered with newspaper clippings about the West Side Heights development. Isaiah sat uncomfortably, on her worn couch, cradling a mug of coffee as morning light streamed through thin curtains. I've been digging all night, Maya said, setting her laptop between them. The story about you is everywhere, but most people are just speculating. I need to hear it from you. Were you really a lawyer? Isaiah stared into his coffee. No. I never passed the bar. But you were at Yale Law. For 3 years. 3 weeks. Before graduation, everything fell apart. Maya leaned forward. What happened, Isaiah? He took a deep breath, the memories he'd kept locked away for decades pushing to the surface. I was at the top of my class, had a federal clerkship lined up. My path was set, until it wasn't. Until it wasn't, he echoed. I interned at Whitmore, Blackwell, and Turner during my second year. Back then, Conrad Whitmore was the managing partner. Richardson Development was already their biggest client. Isaiah set down his mug, his hands suddenly unsteady. I noticed patterns in how they operated. Black and Latino attorneys assigned to less prestigious cases, passed over for promotion, held to different standards. When I raised concerns, they assured me they were committed to diversity, but they weren't. They were committed to the appearance of diversity. I was their golden boy, the black Yale student they could parade around to show how progressive they were. Isaiah stood, pacing Maya's small living room. In my third year, I worked with Dr. Eleanor Pierce on a study of racial bias in hiring practices at top law firms. When our research revealed Whitmore's firm had the worst record in the state, I brought the data directly to Whitmore, thought he'd want to address it. He didn't. 2 days later, I was called before the Academic Integrity Board. Someone had anonymously submitted evidence that I'd fabricated research data and plagiarized portions of my law review article. Maya's eyes widened. They framed you. Completely. The evidence was meticulous. Falsified emails, doctored research, notes, even testimony from a junior partner claiming I'd asked him to help me cheat. What did Dr. Pierce say? She fought for me fiercely. But Whitmore's firm had endowed a chair at Yale, had partners on the board of trustees. They made it clear the school's funding was at stake. So Yale threw you under the bus. Isaiah nodded. Slowly. They offered me a choice. Withdraw voluntarily with no degree or face a public hearing that would end with expulsion and potential criminal charges for fraud. And you withdrew. I had no money for legal representation. My father was a preacher with a small congregation in Detroit. We'd already mortgaged their home to pay for what scholarships didn't cover. Isaiah's voice cracked slightly. I couldn't put them through that. So you disappeared, became invisible, changed cities, took whatever jobs I could find. Eventually landed custodial work. It's steady, people don't ask questions, and I could still be around the law. Maya sat back, processing everything. And now you're back in Whitmore's crosshairs, 25 years later. History has a way of circling back, Isaiah said quietly. Maya closed her laptop decisively. We need to use this, Isaiah. Whitmore presiding over the West Side Heights case isn't just a conflict of interest, it's personal vendetta. We can file for his recusal. And who would we file it with? The Judicial Review Board is stacked with his former colleagues. This system is designed to protect people like Whitmore. Then we go public. The story's already out there. We just need to tell the whole truth. Isaiah shook his head. You don't understand. They destroyed me once with lies. What's to stop them from doing it again? Us, Maya said firmly. We're going to fight back. And this time, you're not alone. As they strategized, Maya's phone buzzed incessantly with notifications. The constitutional janitor story was picking up steam. News outlets were requesting interviews. Legal blogs were speculating about Isaiah's background, and social media was ablaze with the video. We can use this attention, Maya insisted. Public pressure could force Whitmore to recuse himself. Or it could make him dig in deeper, Isaiah countered. Men like him don't respond well to being challenged. Maya's phone rang, a courthouse clerk she'd befriended. After a brief conversation, her face darkened. What is it? Isaiah asked. Whitmore just scheduled an emergency hearing for tomorrow morning. He's claiming new evidence has emerged that undermines your testimony. What evidence? He didn't say. He didn't. But the clerk overheard Whitmore on the phone with Blackwell, mentioning something about Yale. Isaiah's stomach dropped. They're going to resurrect the old accusations. Then we need to get ahead of it. Tell our side first. The library on First Street was quiet that afternoon. Marion Lewis, the head librarian for the past 30 years, looked up from her desk as Isaiah and Maya approached. Isaiah Brown, she said, a smile warming her weathered face. Been a while since you visited my archives. Hello, Marion. This is Maya Ruiz. We need your help. Marion studied them over her reading glasses. This have anything to do with you? Becoming an internet sensation? Isaiah winced. You saw that? My granddaughter showed me. Said, Grandma, isn't this the man who used to spend hours in your law section? Marion chuckled. I nearly fell out of my chair. We need to access the microfiche archives, Isaiah explained. Yale Law Journal, 1998, and any local papers that covered the academic integrity case. Marion's expression grew serious. Finally fighting back, are you? Trying to. About time. She led them to a back room filled with filing cabinets. I saved everything, you know. Always knew someday you'd need it. For hours, they combed through articles, cross-referencing dates and statements. Maya took careful notes while Isaiah reconstructed the timeline of his downfall. Look at this, Maya said, pointing to a quote from a younger Conrad Whitmore in a legal journal. Isaiah Brown's accusations represent a disappointing attempt to blame others for his own ethical failings. And here, Isaiah added, finding another clipping. They quoted my research without attribution in their diversity report the very next year. By evening, they had compiled a damning collection of evidence, not enough to prove Isaiah's innocence definitively, but sufficient to raise serious questions about Whitmore's integrity. As they left the library, Isaiah noticed a black SUV parked across the street, its windows tinted. The same vehicle had been outside Maya's apartment that morning. We're being watched, he said quietly. Maya followed his gaze. Richardson doesn't like what we're doing. This isn't just about real estate anymore. Whitmore's reputation is at stake. All the more reason to keep pushing. That night, Isaiah returned to his apartment to find the door slightly ajar. Heart pounding, he entered cautiously. The place had been searched. Books pulled from shelves, files rifled through, his laptop missing. On his kitchen table sat a single envelope. Inside was a printout of the old Yale Integrity Board complaint against him, with a handwritten note. History repeats itself. Isaiah called Maya immediately. They were in my apartment. They're going to use the old accusations against me in court tomorrow. Then we'll be ready for them, she replied, her voice steady despite the tension. Get somewhere safe for the night. I'm going to call someone who might be able to help us. Morning found them in courtroom 4 again, but this time the gallery was packed. Journalists, community members, and even a few law students who'd heard about the constitutional janitor overnight. Judge Whitmore entered, his face a mask of judicial solemnity belied by the triumph in his eyes. Before we proceed with the West Side Heights matter, he announced. "I must address a serious concern about witness credibility. New information has come to light regarding Mr. Isaiah Brown." Whitmore held up a folder. "Documents from Yale Law School indicate Mr. Brown was nearly expelled for academic dishonesty and fraud, specifically, falsifying research data and plagiarism. While he withdrew before formal proceedings, the evidence was substantial." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Isaiah sat perfectly still, feeling the weight of 24 eyes on him. "Furthermore," Whitmore continued, "Mr. Brown deliberately misled this court by posing as an impartial witness while concealing his own personal interest in the case as a West Side Heights resident." Maya rose. "Your Honor, if I may—" "You may not, Ms. Ruiz. This is not a debate. Based on these revelations, I am striking Mr. Brown's testimony from the record and issuing a formal reprimand." "On what grounds?" Maya demanded. "Contempt, Ms. Ruiz. One more word and you'll join him." From the back of the courtroom, a commanding voice cut through the tension. "I believe I can shed some light on this matter, Your Honor." All heads turned to see an elegant black woman in her 70s making her way down the center aisle. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun, her posture impeccable despite the cane she leaned on lightly. Isaiah's breath caught in his throat. "Dr. Pierce," he whispered. Dr. Eleanor Pierce, Professor Emerita of Yale Law School, approached the bench. "I request permission to address the court regarding this matter." Whitmore's confident expression faltered. "Dr. Pierce, this is unexpected. Ice high. Imagine it is. But when I saw the news about my former student, I felt compelled to set the record straight." "This is highly irregular," Whitmore protested. "So is using a 25-year-old unproven accusation to discredit a witness, Conrad." Dr. Pierce's use of the judge's first name sent another ripple through the courtroom, especially when you yourself were involved in creating those accusations. Whitmore's face reddened. "That's enough. This court is not the place to rehash ancient academic disputes. Then perhaps we should discuss it at the Judicial Review Board," Dr. Pierce suggested mildly. "I've already submitted a formal complaint regarding your conflict of interest in this case. The evidence makes for fascinating reading." For a moment, the courtroom was utterly silent. Then Whitmore cleared his throat. "Court is adjourned until tomorrow morning. I will consider these developments." As people filed out, whispering excitedly, Isaiah approached Dr. Pierce with trembling hands. "Professor," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I never thought I'd see you again." She took his hands in hers. "When I saw that video, I knew it was time. You were always meant for more than what they did to you, Isaiah. But how did you know to come today?" Dr. Pierce smiled. "A passionate young lawyer called me last night, said it was time to right an old wrong." Isaiah looked over at Maya, who gave him a small nod. "We have much to discuss," Dr. Pierce continued, "and very little time to prepare." That afternoon, they gathered in Marion's library archive room. Isaiah, Maya, Dr. Pierce, and Marion herself. On the table between them lay yellowed papers, law journals, and printouts of emails Dr. Pierce had preserved for a quarter century. "After you left," Dr. Pierce explained, "I kept investigating, gathered evidence about what Whitmore's firm was really doing. But without you as the complainant, no one would listen." "And now?" Isaiah asked. "Now we have a chance to expose not just what they did to you, but what they've been doing ever since. That development company, Richardson, they've been working with Whitmore for decades, using the courts to displace communities of color across the state." Maya spread out property records she'd obtained. "Look at the pattern. Every major Richardson development over the past 20 years was built on land where predominantly Black and Latino communities once stood, and every case went through Whitmore's courtroom." "It's legal redlining," Isaiah said, the pieces falling into place, using the courts instead of banks to achieve the same result. "Exactly," Dr. Pierce nodded. "And now they've set their sights on West Side Heights." "But how do we prove it?" Marion asked. "Patterns aren't enough in court." Maya pulled out a flash drive. "This might help. A security guard at the courthouse, Jim Thompson, has been helping me. He managed to access the courtroom security footage from days when Whitmore thought no one was watching. She connected the drive to her laptop, and they watched in silence as the screen showed Whitmore in his chambers, meeting privately with Richardson executives. Clear judicial misconduct. This changes everything, Isaiah said quietly. Dr. Pierce placed a hand on his shoulder. Isaiah, it's time for you to decide. You can walk away. No one would blame you after what they put you through. Or you can stand and fight not just for yourself, but for everyone they've hurt. Isaiah looked at the faces around him. Dr. Pierce, who had never stopped believing in him. Marion, who had preserved his history. Maya, who had brought him back into the light. And he thought of his neighbors at West Side Heights, fighting to keep their homes. What do we do next? He asked. Maya smiled. We go back to court, but this time, we're ready for them. The next morning, news vans lined the street outside the courthouse. Overnight, the story had exploded. Constitutional janitor faces off against judge who destroyed his career. Protesters gathered on the steps, holding signs reading, "Let him speak" and "Justice for West Side Heights." Inside, courtroom 4 was standing room only. Richardson's team of lawyers huddled nervously at their table, while Maya organized her notes with newfound confidence. When Isaiah entered, a murmur of recognition swept through the crowd. He wore the same navy suit, but something had changed. He walked taller now, his eyes clear and focused. To everyone's surprise, when the bailiff called the court to order, it wasn't Judge Whitmore who entered, but Judge Evelyn Langston, a distinguished Black woman in her 60s known for her uncompromising fairness. Due to concerns regarding judicial impartiality, she announced, Judge Whitmore has recused himself from this case. I will be presiding going forward. Isaiah and Maya exchanged shocked glances. Across the room, Blackwell and his team looked equally stunned. Now, Judge Langston continued, I understand there are serious allegations regarding the conduct of both parties in this case. Ms. Ruiz, you filed a motion to dismiss Richardson Development's eviction notices on grounds of discriminatory practice and judicial misconduct. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, Maya replied, standing. And we have evidence to support these claims. Very well, you may proceed. Maya approached the bench. Your Honor, I'd like to call Isaiah Brown as an expert witness on the pattern of property acquisitions by Richardson Development over the past 2 decades. Blackwell shot to his feet. Objection. Mr. Brown is not an expert in any relevant field. He's a janitor with a grudge. Judge Langston fixed Blackwell with a steady gaze. Mr. Blackwell, this court will not tolerate ad hominem attacks. Mr. Brown's current employment is irrelevant to his knowledge or expertise. But, Your Honor, there are serious questions about Mr. Brown's academic integrity that bear directly on his credibility. I'm aware of those allegations, Judge Langston replied. I'm also aware they were never proven in any formal proceeding. Objection overruled. Mr. Brown may testify. As Isaiah took the stand, he felt a strange calm settle over him. For 25 years, he had hidden in the shadows, watching injustice unfold from a safe distance. Now finally, he was stepping into the light. Mr. Brown, Maya began, could you explain to the court your educational background? I attended Yale Law School from 1995 to 1998, where I specialized in housing law and civil rights litigation under the mentorship of Dr. Eleanor Pierce. And what happened in your final year at Yale? Isaiah took a deep breath. I conducted research into discriminatory hiring practices at major law firms, including Whitmore, Blackwell, and Turner. When I presented my findings, I was accused of academic dishonesty and forced to withdraw 3 weeks before graduation. What happened after that? I moved away, changed careers, and eventually returned to this city as a courthouse maintenance worker. And during your years working in the courthouse, what did you observe about cases involving Richardson Development? Isaiah leaned forward. I noticed a pattern. Every Richardson project began with eviction proceedings against residents in predominantly minority neighborhoods. These cases were invariably assigned to Judge Whitmore, who ruled in Richardson's favor 100% of the time. often ignoring valid legal challenges from tenants. "Objection!" Blackwell shouted. "This is pure speculation from an unqualified witness." "Your Honor," Maya responded calmly, "Mr. Brown has first-hand knowledge of these proceedings. He was present in the courtroom for most of them." "Because he was cleaning it," Blackwell sneered. "Mr. Blackwell," Judge Langston warned, "one more remark of that nature, and you will be held in contempt. The objection is overruled. Continue, Ms. Ruiz." Maya introduced the property records and court documents they had compiled, methodically, building the case that Richardson and Whitmore had collaborated in a pattern of discriminatory development spanning decades. Throughout Isaiah's testimony, the courtroom remained silent, captivated by his quiet authority and encyclopedic knowledge of the cases. Even reporters scribbling furiously seemed reluctant to miss a word. "Mr. Brown," Maya concluded, "in your expert opinion, is the West Side Heights development part of this same pattern?" "Without question," Isaiah replied. "The tactics are identical, targeting a predominantly minority community, manufacturing building code violations, fast-tracking eviction proceedings through a sympathetic judge. The only difference is that this time, they got caught." Blackwell's cross-examination was aggressive but ineffective. Each time he tried to undermine Isaiah's credibility, Isaiah responded with such precise legal reasoning and case citations that the attack seemed petty and desperate. When Isaiah finally stepped down, the courtroom erupted in applause. Judge Langston banged her gavel repeatedly until order was restored. "This court will take a 1-hour recess," she announced. "When we return, we will hear testimony regarding the alleged judicial misconduct." In the hallway outside, reporters swarmed around Isaiah and Maya. "Mr. Brown, will you be pursuing reinstatement at Yale Law? Ms. Ruiz, is it true you've uncovered evidence of a citywide corruption scheme?" Maya skillfully guided Isaiah through the crowd toward a quiet side room where Dr. Pierce waited. "You were magnificent," the professor said, embracing him. "Absolutely magnificent." "It feels surreal," Isaiah admitted, speaking openly after hiding for so long. "This is who you were always meant to be," Dr. Pierce told him. "I remember the day you came to my office as a first-year student, talking about using the law to protect vulnerable communities. That fire never really went out, did it?" Isaiah smiled sadly. "It just burned in a different way." A soft knock at the door interrupted them. A courthouse security guard, Jim Thompson, entered cautiously. "Mr. Brown? There's something you should know." Judge Whitmore didn't recuse himself voluntarily. "There was a closed-door meeting with the chief judge this morning after that video leaked." "What video?" Maya asked. Jim pulled out his phone. "This one, from the courthouse security system." The video showed Judge Whitmore in his chambers yesterday, raging at Blackwell. "I don't care what it takes. Discredit that uppity janitor. He's not going to ruin me twice. Use the old Yale accusations, plant something in his apartment, whatever it takes." Isaiah stared at the screen in disbelief. "How did this get out?" Jim looked uncomfortable. "Someone accessed the system last night and sent this clip to every news outlet in the city. They're saying it was a hack, but you helped us." Maya finished for him. "Jim, that could cost you your job." "Some things are worth the risk," he replied simply. "My grandmother lives in West Side Heights. She raised me in that apartment they're trying to take." When court reconvened, the gallery had somehow grown even more crowded. Civil rights attorneys, community activists, and even a few state legislators had arrived to witness the proceedings. Judge Langston called the court to order. "Before we continue, I want to address the video circulating in the media. While the court does not condone unauthorized access to security footage, the content of that video has raised serious concerns about judicial conduct in this case. Therefore, I am ordering a full investigation into Judge Whitmore's handling of all cases involving Richardson Development." Maya stood. "Your Honor, in light of the mounting evidence of misconduct, we move for an immediate stay on all West Side Heights eviction proceedings pending the outcome of that investigation." Blackwell began to object, but a man in an expensive suit at the Richardson table placed a restraining hand on his arm and stood instead. "Your Honor, I'm Edward Richardson, CEO of Richardson Development. In light of recent Revelations. We wish to withdraw our eviction notices and re-examine our development plans for Westside Heights. A shocked murmur ran through the courtroom. We also, Richardson continued, his voice tight, wish to open discussions with community representatives about a more equitable approach to urban renewal that doesn't displace current residents. Judge Langston's expression remained neutral, but her eyes narrowed slightly. While I appreciate this sudden change of heart, Mr. Richardson, it does not erase the serious allegations of misconduct that have been raised. This court will still pursue a full investigation. Of course, Your Honor. As the proceedings wrapped up, the courtroom buzzed with excitement. Maya gathered her papers, beaming at Isaiah. We did it, she whispered. Richardson's backing down. For now, Isaiah cautioned. Men like that don't surrender easily. But we've bought time and exposed Whitmore. That's a start. Outside the courthouse, they were greeted by cheers from Westside Heights residents who had gathered to show support. Isaiah spotted the Jenkins family, the elderly couple whose confrontation had started everything, smiling and waving from the crowd. A young reporter pushed forward. Mr. Brown, what happens next? Will you be pursuing reinstatement at Yale Law, filing a lawsuit against Judge Whitmore, returning to legal practice? Isaiah paused, suddenly uncertain. For 25 years, his identity had been defined by what he'd lost. Now, standing in the sunlight with possibilities stretching before him, he wasn't sure who he was supposed to be. I don't know yet, he answered honestly. But whatever comes next, it won't be about the past. It will be about making sure what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else. Later that evening, Isaiah sat alone in his apartment, surrounded by the books and papers that had kept his legal mind sharp through decades of silence. His phone hadn't stopped ringing. Old classmates who'd seen the news, law firms suddenly interested in his unique perspective, even a producer wanting to discuss movie rights to his story. A knock at his door revealed Maya, holding a bottle of champagne and 2 paper cups. Hope you don't mind, she said, stepping inside. Figured we earned this. She poured them each a cup, then raised hers in a toast. To justice, finally. Isaiah clinked his cup against hers. To beginnings, disguised as endings. So, Maya asked, settling onto his worn couch. What now? Richardson backing down feels too easy, Isaiah said. Something's not right. They saw which way the wind was blowing. The video of Whitmore was damning. Maybe. Isaiah wasn't convinced. Or maybe they're regrouping, finding another angle. Maya's phone buzzed. She checked it, then looked up with wide eyes. It's a message from Jim. Whitmore just cleared out his chambers. He's leaving town tonight. Running away, Isaiah mused. That's not like him. There's more. Jim overheard Richardson's lawyers talking. They mentioned something about original documents and insurance policy. Isaiah set down his cup, suddenly alert. Did they say where these documents are? No. Just that Whitmore was supposed to destroy them years ago, but kept them as leverage. Isaiah stood, pacing the small apartment. If Whitmore kept evidence about what really happened at Yale, we need to find it before he disappears, Maya finished. But how? We can't exactly search his house. Isaiah's eyes fell on the old photograph of himself at Yale, standing between Dr. Pierce and another professor he'd nearly forgotten, William Larson, Whitmore's former law partner, who had later become a federal judge. I think I know someone. Who might help us? Isaiah said slowly. But it's a long shot. Maya followed his gaze to the photograph. At this point, I'll take any shot we can get. As night fell over the city, a storm was brewing, not just in the dark clouds gathering on the horizon, but in the momentum of truth, finally breaking free after decades of suppression. For Isaiah Brown, the janitor who had quoted the Constitution and shaken a corrupt system to its core, the real battle was just beginning. By dawn, the video of Judge Whitmore's chamber rant had gone viral. News channels played the clip on repeat. I don't care what it takes. Discredit that uppity janitor. The racial slur he'd used afterward had been bleeped out, but everyone knew what he'd said. Overnight, Isaiah Brown had transformed from a local curiosity into a national symbol. Maya arrived at Isaiah's apartment with coffee and newspapers. Every front page featured the story. Judge exposed. The corrupt system that silenced a legal prodigy. "We're trending #1, Maya said, setting down her phone. "Civil rights groups are calling for a complete review of Whitmore's cases." Isaiah looked exhausted. He'd barely slept, spending the night searching for contact information for William Larson, the judge from his Yale photograph. "Any luck?" Maya asked, nodding toward the laptop. "Found him. He's retired now, living upstate. I left a message, but who knows if he'll call back." Maya's phone buzzed. "It's Jim. Whitmore's officially suspended pending investigation. The judiciary panel acted overnight after the video leaked." Isaiah nodded distractedly. "What about those documents Jim overheard them discussing?" "Nothing yet. But we have bigger news. Judge Langston is calling an emergency hearing this afternoon. The whole city's watching now." Outside the courthouse, hundreds of protesters had gathered. Some held signs supporting Isaiah, others demanded justice for West Side Heights, and a vocal group called for Whitmore's disbarment. News vans lined the street, reporters doing live stand-ups against the backdrop of the courthouse steps. Inside, Courtroom 4 had been moved to the larger ceremonial courtroom to accommodate the crowd. Richardson's lawyers huddled nervously at their table, but Blackwell was noticeably absent. When Judge Langston entered, the room fell silent. She surveyed the packed gallery with calm authority. "These proceedings have taken an unprecedented turn," she began. "The evidence of judicial misconduct is deeply troubling. This court will not tolerate corruption, bias, or abuse of power." She shuffled the papers before her. "I have here a motion filed by Richardson Development this morning, requesting a continuance of 90 days to reassess their position on the West Side Heights project." Maya stood. "Your Honor, we oppose this motion. It's clearly a delay tactic, to let the public attention die down before they resume their eviction efforts." "I tend to agree, Ms. Ruiz," Judge Langston replied. "Motion denied. Instead, I am issuing an immediate injunction prohibiting any eviction proceedings at West Side Heights for 6 months, during which time a complete review of Richardson's development practices will be conducted by an independent commission." A cheer erupted from the community members in the gallery. Judge Langston banged her gavel. "Furthermore, in light of the serious allegations regarding Judge Whitmore's conduct, I am ordering all cases he presided over involving Richardson Development to be reopened for review." The Richardson lawyers looked stricken. One leaned over to whisper urgently to Edward Richardson, who had again made a personal appearance in court. As they were leaving the courthouse, Isaiah and Maya were approached by a distinguished black woman in judicial robes, Judge Miriam Evers from the federal bench. "Mr. Brown," she said, extending her hand, "I followed your story at Yale. What happened to you was unconscionable." "Thank you, Judge Evers. I wanted you to know that the Judicial Conduct Committee is meeting this week. We're looking not just at Whitmore, but at the entire system that enabled him." She handed Isaiah her card. "My door is open if you need anything." As they walked down the courthouse steps, reporters swarmed around them. "Mr. Brown, how does it feel to be vindicated after 25 years? Ms. Ruiz, will you be filing civil rights charges against Judge Whitmore?" Maya adeptly navigated them through the crowd, declining to comment until they reached the street. A black SUV pulled up and the door opened to reveal Dr. Pierce. "Get in," she called. "We have matters to discuss." They drove to a quiet cafe several blocks away. Dr. Pierce ordered tea for everyone before getting down to business. "The media attention is helpful, but dangerous," she said. "Right-wing outlets are already spinning this as radical activists attacking the judiciary." "I've seen the headlines," Maya confirmed. "They're calling Isaiah a disgruntled former student with extremist ties." "What extremist ties?" Isaiah asked, bewildered. "They're digging into your past activism at Yale," Dr. Pierce explained. "The racial justice group you founded, the protests you organized, they're twisting it all." Isaiah shook his head. "That was standard civil rights advocacy. Nothing radical about wanting equal treatment. In today's climate, that's enough for them to paint you as dangerous." Dr. Pierce sipped her tea. "But we can't let that distract us. The real fight is still ahead." What do you mean? Maya asked. Richardson is regrouping. I have contacts at several major banks. They're quietly shopping around for new financing to replace the West Side Heights project. They're not giving up, just changing tactics. Isaiah's phone rang, an unknown number. He excused himself to answer. It's Isaiah Brown. Mr. Brown, this is William Larson. You left me a message about Conrad Whitmore. Isaiah's pulse quickened. Yes, Judge Larson. Thank you for calling back. I saw the news. I've been expecting this day for 25 years. The older man's voice was weary. We should meet in person. There are things you need to know. Things I've kept silent about for too long. That evening, a protest at the courthouse turned chaotic when counter-protesters arrived. What began as peaceful chanting escalated quickly when someone threw a bottle. Police in riot gear formed lines, and tensions mounted. Isaiah, who had been invited to speak at the rally, found himself at the edge of the crowd when he spotted a young black teenager knocked down in the confusion. Without hesitation, he pushed through to help the boy up and shield him from the advancing police line. A photographer captured the moment, Isaiah standing protectively in front of the frightened teen, arms outstretched toward the police. By morning, the image was on every news site in the country. The Guardian read one headline, above the powerful photograph. Public sentiment, already shifting in Isaiah's favor, crystallized into widespread support. Even conservative outlets found it difficult to demonize the man in that image. The following day, Isaiah met Judge Larson at a quiet park bench far from the courthouse. Larson was in his 80s now, stooped, but still sharp-eyed. I left Whitmore's firm a year after what they did to you, Larson began without preamble. I couldn't stomach it anymore. But by then, the damage was done. You knew they framed me, Isaiah said, not as a question. I did. I was too cowardly to speak up then. My judicial nomination was pending. I told myself I could do more good on the bench than by sacrificing my career for one student. Larson looked down at his gnarled hands. I've regretted that calculation every day since. Why come forward now? Because Whitmore kept evidence. He was always covering his tracks, kept files on everyone and everything. Insurance, he called it. Jim Thompson mentioned something about original documents, Isaiah said. Larson nodded. Whitmore has a lake house in the mountains. He keeps a safe there with all his insurance files, including, I believe, the original documents from your case, the ones that would prove your innocence and their guilt. How do you know this? Because he threatened me with my own file when I considered speaking out after my retirement. Larson handed Isaiah a slip of paper. This is the address. What you do with it is up to you. Isaiah stared at the address, possibilities and risks tumbling through his mind. When he returned to Maya's apartment, she was on the phone with a network producer. No, absolutely not. Isaiah will not participate in a reality show about his life. She hung up, exasperated. The offers keep getting weirder. Now it's the Constitutional Janitor reality series. I met with Larson, Isaiah said, cutting through the chatter. He gave me this. He showed her the address. Whitmore's lake house? What are we supposed to do with that? Larson says that's where Whitmore keeps his insurance files, including the original documents from my case at Yale. Maya's eyes widened. The documents that could prove you were framed, and potentially implicate Richardson in decades of corruption. We can't just break into a judge's house, Maya protested. No, but we can alert the FBI to potential evidence in an ongoing corruption investigation. Isaiah met her gaze steadily. It's time to go all the way with this, Maya. No, more half measures. As they debated their next move, Isaiah's phone rang. It was Dr. Pierce, her voice urgent. Turn on the news. Now. They switched on Maya's television to see Edward Richardson holding a press conference outside his company headquarters. While we maintain that our development projects have always complied with the law, Richardson was saying, we recognize the concerns raised by the West Side Heights community. Therefore, we are announcing a new approach to urban renewal, one that works with existing residents rather than displacing them. He's trying to get ahead of the scandal, Maya murmured. Wait for it, Dr. Pierce said over the speakerphone. Richardson continued. Furthermore, we have become aware of disturbing allegations regarding the conduct of certain judicial figures with whom we've worked. Richardson Development has always operated ethically, and we are as shocked as anyone by Judge Whitmore's apparent misconduct. He's throwing Whitmore under the bus, Isaiah realized. Classic Richardson move, Dr. Pierce. Agreed. Cut ties with anyone who becomes a liability. After the call ended, Isaiah sat in thoughtful silence. This changes things. With Richardson publicly distancing himself from Whitmore, the judge has no protection left. All the more reason for him to use whatever insurance he has, Maya pointed out. Or destroy it. They looked at each other, the same thought forming. We need to move fast, Maya said. The following morning, news broke that the FBI had raided Whitmore's lake house overnight, acting on an anonymous tip about evidence relevant to a judicial corruption investigation. Reports indicated they had seized multiple boxes of documents and electronic files. In Courtroom 4, now permanently moved to the larger ceremonial space to accommodate public interest, Judge Langston called an emergency session. The gallery was packed with community members, reporters, and legal observers. The court has been informed that significant new evidence has been uncovered, Judge Langston announced. In light of these developments, I am taking the extraordinary step of recognizing Mr. Isaiah Brown as a formal party to these proceedings. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. The Richardson lawyers conferred urgently. Mr. Brown, Judge Langston continued, do you wish to represent yourself in this matter, or will Ms. Ruiz be acting as your counsel? Isaiah stood, straightened his tie, and took a deep breath. Your Honor, I wish to represent myself as a lay litigant under my Sixth Amendment right to self-representation. The Richardson lawyers erupted in objections. Your Honor, this is absurd. Mr. Brown is not a licensed attorney. This is a complex civil matter involving multiple parties and millions of dollars. Judge Langston silenced them with a raised hand. Mr. Brown has demonstrated a thorough understanding of the law. The Constitution is clear on the right to self-representation. Motion granted. Isaiah moved to the front of the courtroom, taking a seat at what had been the public defender's table. Across the aisle, Charles Vane, a senior partner from Richardson's law firm, watched with barely concealed disdain. A janitor playing lawyer, Vane muttered just loud enough to be heard. This is what our justice system has come to. Judge Langston shot him a warning look. Mr. Vane, you will show respect to all parties in this courtroom, regardless of their current occupation. The proceedings began with Isaiah methodically presenting evidence of irregularities in the West Side Heights eviction notices. With the precision of a seasoned attorney, he demonstrated how signatures had been forged, dates altered, and code violations fabricated. These same tactics, Isaiah explained, displaying documents on the courtroom's projection system, appear in at least 17 other Richardson developments over the past 2 decades. In each case, Judge Whitmore presided and ruled in Richardson's favor, despite clear evidence of fraud. Isaiah called his first witness, an elderly veteran in a wheelchair who had lived in West Side Heights for 40 years. Mr. Parker, can you tell the court what happened when Richardson's inspectors came to your apartment? They came when I was at VA Medical, said they found code violations. When I got home, they'd changed my locks. All my belongings, my late wife's photos, everything was in dumpsters. The courtroom was silent as the old man described how he'd been homeless for 3 weeks before community activists helped him fight the illegal eviction. As Isaiah built his case throughout the morning, the Richardson team grew visibly nervous. During a recess, Maya overheard them urgently calling their office for additional counsel. When court resumed, Vane had a surprise of his own. Your Honor, the defense calls Patricia Taylor. A well-dressed woman in her 50s approached the stand. After being sworn in, she identified herself as a former administrative assistant at Yale Law School. Ms. Taylor, did you work in the Academic Integrity Office during Isaiah Brown's time at Yale? I did. And in your position, did you have access to Mr. Brown's case file? Yes, sir. Can you tell the court what you observed regarding Mr. Brown's academic conduct? Patricia Taylor looked directly at Isaiah. I personally witnessed Mr. Brown ask another student to write portions of his law review article. He also falsified research data to support his claims of discrimination. The courtroom erupted. Isaiah felt the blood drain from his face as Judge Langston called for order. "Your Honor," Isaiah managed when the room quieted. "I've never seen this woman before in my life." "Are you calling the witness a liar, Mr. Brown?" Vane asked with mock concern. "I'm stating a fact. I never met Ms. Taylor at Yale." The cross-examination was brutal. Isaiah felt himself floundering as the woman calmly invented detailed stories about his supposed misconduct. By the time she stepped down, the momentum had shifted dramatically. During the lunch recess, Isaiah sat alone in a conference room, head in his hands. The door opened and Maya entered with Dr. Pierce. "That woman is lying," Isaiah said wearily. "But it's her word against mine." "It's worse than that," Dr. Pierce replied grimly. "I just got a call from Yale. There was never an administrative assistant named Patricia Taylor in the Academic Integrity Office during your time there. Then who is she?" "We don't know yet. But Vane blindsided us with a fake witness. That means they're desperate." When court resumed, Isaiah felt hollowed out. The morning's confidence had evaporated, replaced by the familiar sensation of fighting a rigged system. As Vane called his next witness, a handwriting expert prepared to testify that Isaiah had forged documents, the courtroom doors opened. A court officer approached Judge Langston and handed her a note. She read it, her expression changing subtly. "Counsel, approach the bench." After a brief, intense sidebar, Judge Langston addressed the court. "We will recess until tomorrow morning. There has been a significant development that requires the court's immediate attention." That evening, Isaiah received a call from Judge Langston's clerk. "The judge would like to see you and Ms. Ruiz in her chambers immediately. She said it's urgent." When they arrived, they found Judge Langston with Dr. Pierce and, surprisingly, the FBI agent who had led the raid on Whitmore's lake house. "Mr. Brown," Judge Langston began, "the FBI has recovered documents from Judge Whitmore's residence that directly relate to your case at Yale. Dr. Pierce has reviewed them and can verify their authenticity." Dr. Pierce handed Isaiah a file. "These are the original research notes that Whitmore claimed you falsified. They match perfectly with the copies I kept before they were doctored to frame you." "There's more," the FBI agent added. "We found communications between Whitmore and Richardson dating back to 1998, discussing how to handle the Brown situation. You weren't just a threat to Whitmore's firm, you were about to expose their entire operational model of judicial manipulation and discriminatory development." Isaiah leafed through the documents, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "After all these years." "Tomorrow," Judge Langston said firmly, "we will address Ms. Taylor's perjury and the submission of falsified evidence by Richardson's counsel. I wanted you to know tonight so you could prepare." When Isaiah returned to court the next morning, he was a changed man. The uncertainty was gone, replaced by the calm confidence of someone who finally had truth on his side. The gallery whispered as he walked to his table. Not in the plain suit of previous days, but in a crisp charcoal suit Dr. Pierce had brought him, tailored years ago for a Yale Law graduation he never attended. As Judge Langston entered, the room fell silent. "Before we proceed, I must address a serious matter. Yesterday, this court heard testimony from a witness who has since been identified as an actress hired to impersonate a Yale administrator. This constitutes perjury and an egregious attempt to defraud the court." She turned her gaze to Vane. "Mr. Vane, as the attorney who presented this witness, you are hereby held in contempt. Federal authorities are waiting outside to discuss potential criminal charges for suborning perjury." 2 U.S. Marshals entered and escorted a shell-shocked Vane from the courtroom. "Now," Judge Langston continued, "in light of the authenticated documents recovered from Judge Whitmore's residence, I am granting Mr. Brown's motion to proceed with full legal authority in this case." She looked directly at Isaiah. "Mr. Brown, you may continue with your presentation of evidence." Isaiah stood, feeling the weight of the moment. "Thank you, Your Honor. I call Edward Richardson to the stand." As the real estate magnate reluctantly approached the witness box, Isaiah felt a fire he hadn't experienced in 25 years. The system that had silenced him was finally being forced to listen, and he had much to say. Edward Richardson sat in the witness box, his usual confidence visibly shaken. At 68, the real estate mogul had spent decades cultivating an image of untouchable success. Now faced with Isaiah Brown, a man whose life he had helped destroy, that carefully constructed facade was beginning to crack. "Mr. Richardson," Isaiah began, his voice steady. "How long have you known Judge Conrad Whitmore?" Objection, relevance, called Richardson's new attorney, a hastily summoned senior partner named Harrison Wells. "Your Honor," Isaiah responded, "I intend to establish a pattern of collusion between Mr. Richardson and Judge Whitmore that directly affected housing rights in minority communities, including Westside Heights." "Overruled," Judge Langston said. "The witness will answer." Richardson cleared his throat. "I've known Conrad professionally for approximately 30 years. And in what capacity did your relationship begin?" "He represented our company in some early property acquisitions." Isaiah approached the evidence table, retrieving a document from the FBI's seizure. "I'm presenting Exhibit 27, a letter from Conrad Whitmore to Edward Richardson dated March 1998, the same month I was forced out of Yale Law School." He handed copies to the judge and opposing counsel, then held one before Richardson. "Could you read the highlighted portion for the court?" Richardson's jaw tightened. "I'd rather not." "Your Honor?" Isaiah looked to Judge Langston. "Mr. Richardson, you will read the highlighted text." Richardson exhaled sharply. "The Brown situation has been handled. He won't be a problem for our development strategy going forward. The partners agree that this approach should be our template for dealing with similar obstacles." "What development strategy was Judge Whitmore, then a private attorney, referring to?" Isaiah asked. "I don't recall." Isaiah produced another document. "Perhaps this will refresh your memory. Exhibit 28, an internal Richardson development memo titled Community Acquisition Protocol, dated 1 week after my expulsion from Yale." He began reading. "Identify aging housing in minority neighborhoods. Document code violations, legitimate or otherwise. Expedite eviction proceedings through sympathetic judges. Minimize community resistance by discrediting organizers." "That's taken out of context," Richardson interrupted. "Is it?" Isaiah placed the document on the evidence projector for the entire courtroom to see. "This protocol has been implemented in 27 communities over 25 years, displacing approximately 9,000 families, 84% of them minorities." The courtroom erupted in angry murmurs. Judge Langston called for order. Isaiah continued his methodical dismantling of Richardson's empire, introducing document after document recovered from Whitmore's lake house. Bank transfers, property assessments, deliberately undervalued backdated permits, all pointing to a systematic scheme to target minority communities for redevelopment. By mid-afternoon, Richardson was visibly sweating. His answers grew shorter, more defensive. When Isaiah presented evidence that Richardson Development had donated to Whitmore's judicial campaign through shell companies, the businessman finally snapped. "Everyone does it," he blurted. "This is how development works in this city. You think I'm the only one? Half the downtown skyline was built this way." The courtroom fell silent. Judge Langston leaned forward. "Mr. Richardson, are you admitting to bribing a federal judge to rule in your favor?" Richardson looked to his lawyer in panic. Wells quickly stood. "Your Honor, my client misspoke. He was referring to legal campaign contributions only." "That's not what he said," Isaiah noted calmly. "And that's not what the evidence shows." Before Wells could respond, the courtroom doors opened. A court officer approached Judge Langston with an urgent message. After reading it, she addressed the court. "We will take a brief recess. Mr. Brown, Ms. Ruiz, counsel for Richardson Development, in my chambers, immediately." In the judge's private chambers, a Justice Department official waited alongside an FBI agent. "We've just executed a search warrant at Richardson Development headquarters," the agent explained. "Based on documents recovered from Judge Whitmore's residence, we had probable cause to believe additional evidence of judicial bribery would be found." "And was it?" Judge Langston asked. "Yes, Your Honor. We've discovered financial records indicating payments to 7 different judges across 3 states, including Judge Whitmore." The agent turned to Isaiah. "We also found a complete file on Mr. Brown. Surveillance reports dating back to his time at Yale, continuing through his employment as a janitor. Isaiah felt a chill. They've been watching me all these years? You were considered a loose end, the agent confirmed. Someone who knew too much. Judge Langston surveyed the room. Given these developments, I'm declaring a recess until tomorrow morning. Mr. Richardson will remain under oath. The Justice Department has requested he not leave the jurisdiction. When court reconvened the next day, the gallery was standing room only. Richardson sat stone-faced at the defense table, surrounded by a new team of attorneys, criminal defense specialists brought in overnight. Isaiah rose. Your Honor, the plaintiff recalls Judge Conrad Whitmore to the stand. A murmur ran through the courtroom as Whitmore was escorted in by federal marshals. The formerly imposing judge now looked diminished, his arrogance replaced by grim resignation. After being sworn in, Whitmore glared at Isaiah with undisguised hatred. Judge Whitmore, Isaiah began, yesterday Mr. Richardson testified about your long-standing professional relationship. I'd like to discuss the nature of that relationship. I have nothing to say to you, Whitmore spat. You're under oath, sir, Judge Langston reminded him sharply. Isaiah approached with a document. This is a record of deposits to an offshore account in your name. Can you explain why Richardson Development transferred $5 million to this account between 2005 and 2023? On advice of counsel, I invoke my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. I understand. Let's try a different question. Isaiah switched tactics. In 1998, you were a partner at Whitmore, Blackwell, and Turner when I interned there. Did you personally orchestrate the academic fraud allegations against me? Whitmore's lawyer jumped up. Objection. This has nothing to do with the Westside Heights case. On the contrary, Isaiah countered, it establishes a pattern of behavior directly relevant to how Richardson and Whitmore collaborated to silence opposition to their development practices. Overruled, Judge Langston decided. The witness will answer. Whitmore's face contorted with anger. You were a threat, a self-righteous kid who thought he could change the system. You needed to be taught a lesson. The courtroom fell silent, shocked by the admission. So you fabricated evidence to destroy my academic career? Isaiah pressed. You brought it on yourself, Whitmore snarled. Digging into our hiring practices, talking about systemic racism. We built that firm from nothing. Who were you to question how we operated? I was a law student who believed in justice, Isaiah replied quietly. Justice, Whitmore scoffed. There's no justice. There's only power, and those smart enough to use it. Isaiah picked up another document, including the power to evict families from their homes based on falsified code violations. Those neighborhoods were declining anyway. We improved them. For who? The original residents were forced out. Many became homeless. Collateral damage, Whitmore said dismissively. Progress has costs. Isaiah stared at the man who had derailed his life. One final question, Judge Whitmore. The documents recovered from your lake house. Why did you keep them all these years? You must have known they could incriminate you. For the first time, Whitmore smiled, a cold, calculating expression. Insurance. In this business, you never know when you might need leverage. Richardson, the other judges, the politicians we paid, they all thought they were untouchable. I made sure no one could turn on me without consequences. Yet here we are, Isaiah observed. Because you couldn't stay invisible, could you? Whitmore's voice dripped with venom. The faithful janitor who couldn't resist showing off. If you'd kept your head down, you could have lived out your meaningless life in peace. The courtroom was utterly silent as Isaiah stepped back. No further questions, Your Honor. As Whitmore was escorted out, Maya caught Isaiah's eye from the gallery and gave him a subtle nod. His meticulous preparation had paid off. Whitmore had essentially confessed to everything: judicial corruption, fraud, and the deliberate destruction of Isaiah's career. After a brief recess, Isaiah called his final witness, a court clerk who testified about sealed documents that had mysteriously disappeared from Westside Heights cases over the years. Her testimony completed the picture of a thoroughly corrupted process. When Isaiah finally rested his case, Judge Langston turned to Richardson's attorneys. Does the defense wish to present additional evidence? Wells conferred briefly with Richardson, then stood. Your Honor, given the developments of the past 2 days, Richardson Development would like to propose a settlement. This is a matter of public interest now, Judge Langston replied. Any settlement must address not just the West Side Heights situation, but the pattern of misconduct established by the evidence. We understand, Your Honor. We're prepared to offer substantial restitution to displaced residents, cancel the West Side Heights project entirely, and establish a community development fund administered by independent trustees. Judge Langston looked to Isaiah. Mr. Brown, as the plaintiff's representative, what is your position on this offer? Isaiah stood, considering his response carefully. Your Honor, any settlement must include 3 non-negotiable terms: full restitution to all families displaced by Richardson projects over the past 25 years, the transfer of the West Side Heights property to a community land trust, and complete disclosure of all officials, judges, and regulators who participated in their scheme. Richardson visibly paled. His attorney leaned in to whisper urgently in his ear. We need time to consider these terms, Wells finally said. You have until tomorrow morning, Judge Langston decided. Court is adjourned. That evening, Maya hosted a small gathering at her apartment. Isaiah, Dr. Pierce, Marion from the library, and Jim Thompson, the security guard who had risked his job to help them. To Isaiah, Maya toasted, raising her glass. Who taught an entire city about justice? Isaiah shook his head. To all of us. I couldn't have done this alone. Dr. Pierce squeezed his hand. I received a call from Yale today. The dean wants to formally clear your name and award you your degree. Posthumously, for your father and officially for you. Isaiah felt a wave of emotion at the mention of his father, who had passed away 5 years earlier, never knowing his son would be vindicated. What will you do next? Jim asked. You could work at any law firm in the country now. Isaiah looked around at these people who had believed in him when he had lost faith in himself. I'm not sure yet. But whatever it is, it won't be about going backward. It's time to build something new. 3 weeks later, the courthouse plaza was transformed. Where protesters had once clashed with police, a community celebration now filled the space. Residents of West Side Heights mingled with legal activists, journalists, and curious onlookers. A large screen displayed the live feed from inside, where Judge Langston was about to announce her final ruling. Isaiah stood near the back of the crowd, still uncomfortable with his newfound celebrity. Children ran past wearing T-shirts with his quote about the Fourth Amendment. Street vendors sold constitutional janitor merchandise. It was surreal. There you are, Maya called, pushing through the crowd. You should be inside. This is your victory. It belongs to everyone, Isaiah replied. Besides, I needed some air. Inside the courtroom, Judge Langston delivered her historic decision. The settlement had evolved into a consent decree, a court-enforceable agreement transforming how urban development would proceed in the city. Richardson Development will pay $350 million in restitution to displaced families, she announced. All West Side Heights properties will be transferred to a community land trust. And perhaps most importantly, a full independent investigation will examine every case touched by Judge Whitmore and other implicated officials. The crowd outside erupted in cheers as the ruling was announced. People embraced, some openly weeping. Decades of injustice were finally being addressed. In the following days, the ripple effects spread. Whitmore faced disbarment proceedings and criminal charges. 2 other judges implicated in the scheme resigned. The Justice Department opened investigations in other cities where Richardson had developments. Isaiah found himself in demand everywhere. Law schools wanted him to lecture. Civil rights organizations offered him positions. Publishers pursued his life story. He declined most offers, needing time to process the whirlwind of changes. 1 week after the ruling, Isaiah visited Maya's family home for dinner. Her mother, Teresa, embraced him warmly at the door. My daughter says you're the reason we might finally learn what happened to Miguel, she said, her eyes shining with tears. Maya had explained earlier that her father had been deported 15 years ago after a suspicious ruling by one of Whitmore's colleagues, another judge implicated in the Richardson scheme. The consent decree included reviewing immigration cases handled by the corrupt judges. "I hope you get answers, Mrs. Ruiz," Isaiah said sincerely. "Teresa, please. And you already gave us something precious. Hope." After dinner, Maya showed Isaiah a letter she'd received that morning. "The National Civil Liberties Law Center wants me on their legal team. They're establishing a housing rights division focused on cases just like West Side Heights." "That's perfect for you," Isaiah smiled. "You were born for this work." "What about you? Have you decided what comes next?" Before he could answer, Isaiah's phone rang. Dr. Pierce calling with news. "The university trustees met today," she told him. "Not only are they awarding your degree, they want to establish the Isaiah Brown Center for Housing Justice. Full funding, staff, everything you'd need to train the next generation of advocates." "I don't know what to say," Isaiah managed. "Say yes," Dr. Pierce urged, "or at least think about it. This is your chance to transform what happened to you into something powerful." The next morning, Isaiah received another significant call from Charles Vane, now cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for leniency. "They found records of your father's mortgage," Vane explained. "After Whitmore forced you out of Yale, Richardson's bank subsidiary accelerated the payments. That's why your parents nearly lost their home." "They targeted my family?" Isaiah felt a cold anger rising. "They wanted to ensure you'd be completely broken. No career, no home to return to. They were afraid of you, Brown. Always were." The final piece clicked into place. Why his parents had struggled so desperately during those years. Why his father had taken a second job that ultimately contributed to his early death from heart failure. The scope of Whitmore and Richardson's vindictiveness was breathtaking. That afternoon, Isaiah walked to the small park near his apartment building. A colorful mural now covered the wall facing the playground, Isaiah in his janitor's uniform on one side, Isaiah addressing the court on the other, with the Constitution's preamble arching over both images. As he sat on a bench, contemplating the surreal turn his life had taken, a woman approached with a young boy. "Mr. Brown? I'm sorry to bother you, but my son wanted to meet you. He's been following your story at school." The boy, about 10 years old, looked up at Isaiah with unabashed admiration. "Is it true you memorized the whole Constitution?" Isaiah smiled. "Parts of it, the important parts." "I want to be a lawyer someday," the boy announced. "Like you." "I'm not actually a lawyer," Isaiah reminded him gently. "Yes, you are," the boy insisted. "My teacher says titles don't make you what you are. What you do makes you what you are." The simple wisdom struck Isaiah deeply. For 25 years, he'd defined himself by what had been taken from him: his degree, his career, his potential. But in the past month, he'd accomplished more without those credentials than many did with them. 1 week later, the newly formed Housing Justice Commission held its first public meeting. Representatives from affected communities, legal experts, and city officials gathered to begin the long process of reform. Judge Langston had appointed Isaiah as chair. "Our first priority must be the families," Isaiah began. "Not just financial restitution, but restoring their sense of security and dignity. Housing isn't just about buildings, it's about belonging." After the meeting, Dr. Pierce approached him. "Have you decided about Yale's offer?" "I have," Isaiah nodded. "I'm grateful, but I'm declining. My work is here, with the people directly affected. I can do more good on the ground than in a university setting." "I suspected you'd say that," Dr. Pierce smiled. "So I brought you something." She handed him an envelope. Inside was an official letter from the State Bar Association. Isaiah read it with widening eyes. "They're offering me admission." "To the bar? How is this possible?" "The bar's Character and Fitness Committee reviewed your case extensively. Your conduct during the West Side Heights proceedings, combined with the evidence of the conspiracy against you, convinced them. They're granting you special admission based on extraordinary circumstances and demonstrated legal acumen." Isaiah stared at the document. emotions washing over him. "I never thought I'd see this day." "You've earned it," Dr. Pierce said firmly. "The question is, what will you do with it?" The answer came to Isaiah gradually over the following weeks. He declined the numerous law firm offers, choosing instead to establish a small storefront legal clinic in Westside Heights. 3 days a week, he provided free legal advice to community members. The other days, he taught constitutional law classes for formerly incarcerated individuals and at-risk youth. Maya often collaborated with him, bringing cases from her work at the Civil Liberties Law Center. They made a formidable team, her strategic brilliance complementing his deep knowledge and personal connection to the issues they fought. 6 months after the Richardson settlement, the courthouse underwent renovations. The old maintenance closet where Isaiah had stored his mop and bucket was being converted into a legal aid office for unrepresented litigants. As workers cleared out the space, Isaiah stood in the doorway, remembering the countless days he'd spent, invisible in these halls, watching injustice unfold, powerless to intervene. A young custodian passed by, pushing the same cart Isaiah had used for years. The young man nodded respectfully. "Mr. Brown." "Thomas," Isaiah acknowledged with a smile. "How are your studies going?" "Good, sir. I passed my first pre-law exam last week." "Excellent. Let me know if you need any help with the next one." As Thomas continued down the hall, Isaiah turned back to the empty closet. So much had changed, yet the system itself remained fundamentally the same, built to advantage the powerful, to exhaust the vulnerable, to silence dissent. But now there was a generation watching, learning, and preparing to carry forward the work of transformation. Isaiah had shown them that even the most entrenched corruption could be challenged, that justice delayed need not be justice denied. As he walked through the courthouse lobby toward the exit, Isaiah passed the Constitution, etched into the marble wall. He no longer needed to recite it from memory. His life had become a testament to its highest principles, a living embodiment of the words, "We the people." Outside, a young girl approached him shyly. "Excuse me, Mr. Brown. Can you teach me about rights?" Isaiah smiled, warmth spreading through him. "Of course. Pull up a chair. Have you ever wondered what injustices might be unfolding right in front of you, waiting for someone brave enough to speak up? If this story moved you, like and subscribe for more tales of courage that challenge us to stand against the wrongs we witness every day.